Hi Rajesh. Hi Sindhu.
Hi, Vidhi.
Hi Meera ma'am.
Good afternoon, Vidhi.
Hello Rajesh. Hi Pramod.
Hi. Hi, sir.
Hello.
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 We can see you now.
Yes, sir.
Great. So I think we have a lot of folks joining from Indel, from Ajesh's your team.
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sri Kumar here.
Hi Shri Kumar. Welcome.
How are you?
Very good. Thanks. How are you?
Yeah, fine, good. Barring this corona threat, everything
Absolutely.
is fine. Where are you from? Mumbai?
No, I'm from Gurgaon, from Delhi.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes. Bombay is seemingly in a worse state of lockdown than Delhi and
Kerala also fully locked down.
yeah.
How big
We
is your
don't-
team?
Sorry?
How big is your team in Gurgaon?
In Gurgaon, I'm there with Gateways Global, and we operate as a remote team. Rajesh is based in Kochi, and Sindhu as well, and we have a few others, about 7. Rajesh?
You won some Gartner Award.
Sorry?
Your company has won some Gartner Award. Gartner. I saw somewhere. Now Gartner is a company,
Yes.
which institutes some awards for
Yes.
IT initiatives. And I saw somewhere that you have been
No, sir.
recognized by Gartner.
Sir,
Gartner is a global consulting firm.
that is owned by Zoom.
Hmm?
That is owned by Zoom. Zoom.us.
Zoom must have.
Yeah.
We are a boutique HR consulting organization.
Right. One second, I'll just come back.
Sure, sure. Great. We have a few more people joining. Pranav, Charu, Stanley. Exactly 2 o'clock. We'll wait another 5 minutes, and we'll see how many more participants are joining us. We have quite a few registered today.
ఏదో
If you want to put your audio on mute for the time being before we start, feel free to do that. Hi, Geetu. We're joined by Sajid, Suresh, Jessica. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Where are you, Giri, now? Your house?
Good now.
I'm okay.
Good connectivity, yeah? Good clarity.
Good connectivity so far, yes. Despite the fact that there are so many people using the bandwidth.
How many have joined now?
We have 21 people joined.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 20, 24. Yeah.
We have around close to 50
I
nominations.
count 24, actually.
Yes, so we'll just wait for another 5 minutes or maybe just another 2-3 minutes now before we start.
Baniya.
Who is cooking? What from home and kitchen?
Yes, these are the perils of working from home.
Yes, sir. Sri Kumar, sir, I have already completed my cooking and had my dinner.
I heard some sound, yeah.
That's not from my end, at least.
Yeah, Lena.
When it starts, others can mute your mic.
Hi, Vidhi.
Hi, Srijit.
Hi. I'm going on mute and video is also going to get cut.
Okay. Just keep hearing us.
Sure. I'm there.
Awesome.
올라가려고. 올라가요. 아, 올라가요.
Okay, so I think we will keep waiting for the others to join us, and we will begin our session for today. Right?
Yes.
I would first of all request all of you to put your audio on mute so that we can continue with the session without much disturbances. Just to familiarize you with the tools on your participant screen, you would see a chat window. So keep interacting, keep sending your questions, etc. on the chat window. Do you all see the chat window?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And you would also have something called non-verbal feedback. Does everybody find that? You can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you want me to go faster or slower, or raise a hand for a question. Feel free to do that as well. Does everybody see that? So you can give me a thumbs up if everybody is able to find their non-verbal feedback, because that's how we're going to be able to make this large group very interactive. Right, great. So a very good afternoon to everybody, and thank you all for joining us today in this series of the interactive webinar for making work from home work for you. It's a very pertinent topic really for all of us. It used to be a dream arrangement. Everybody would have wanted a work from home. The irony today as we stand is that we have been suddenly thrown into it. With the outbreak of the COVID-19, organizations have been caught unaware. There have been organizations which have been dabbling in work from home. Part of their workforce was working remotely earlier or occasionally, but having their entire population work from home in a remote location is something which has been unprecedented. It doesn't appear to be going very soon. It's here to stay with us for at least another 6 to 8 weeks as the global predictions go. So how do we make it productive? How do we make it effective? What are the kind of nuances that we can add to it? We have a very varied group today in this webinar, which includes business leaders, owners of businesses, HR leaders, HR business partners, who have to handle their employees. Also, we have many individuals or professionals who are dabbling in work from home for the first time. So where do we turn towards in these times when we have to understand the best practices? Fortunately, we have a community, we have a digital community which is thriving. And in that respect, Gateways Global has taken this initiative to enter into a series of webinars so that we're going to be able to tide over this new normal. Just a little bit about me before we start. My name is Vidhi Kumar, and I'm going to be your facilitator for the next 2 hours. I have about 13 years of experience in corporate HR with organizations like ITC Agrotech, Volvo Aisha. I have handled a variety of domains in HR, learning and development, talent acquisition, employee engagement, business partnering. I have had experience working from home, and I have had experience in making work from home arrangements work for my business partners. So I'm going to bring in a lot of my personal professional experiences along with the global best practices. Right. So a little bit about Gateways Global before we get into the webinar. We are a boutique HR consulting organization based out of Kochi. We are primarily into leadership and coaching. We also have segments of family business facilitation and organizational performance, where we are very extremely strong. So this is how the work from home webinar today is going to work. We have for you these segments. It's been broken up into 3 broad segments. The first is to manage the change. It's a big change for a lot of organizations. It's a big change for a lot of us to be working from home. And we will talk about how it's been impacting the organizations. We'll talk about your role as an HR leader or as a business leader, as an owner. We'll talk about your role as an HR business partner. We'll talk about your role as a line manager if you're managing remote teams. And then we're going to talk about work from home challenges, what are the etiquettes and the best practices, and how do we deal with these. Further than that, we will also share with you some productivity tools which will help you make the best of this time that we are here. It's going to be a very interactive session. We have 2 rounds of question and answers. So like I said earlier, as the session keeps going, you can use your chat window to share the questions which keep coming to your mind. And during the question and answer breaks, we're going to be addressing those questions. Also, use your non-verbal feedback to help me pace up, pace down as you think is right. At this point of time, we are having more participants joining in. So if you want, you can switch off your video as well, and you can keep your audio on mute so that we're going to be using the bandwidth in a much more effective way, right? All right, so without much ado, we're going to be moving straight into our first session, which is on managing change. Now, change, really, this is a huge change which is happening for the organizations. As the number of cases of COVID-19 arise across the world, more and more employees are committing towards the social distancing process, the practice which health agencies have identified as the one thing that can slow down the spread of COVID-19. Many IT and ITS organizations in India, abroad, were amongst the first to ramp up the remote working plans for many or all of their employees, primarily because their business models enabled them to do so, also because they had some prior experience in working from home. But there are a number of other organizations which have manufacturing setups, which require people to be on the shop floor, organizations which require a lot of customer connect. And very traditional organizations may not have a lot of experience working from home, and things get very complicated when they have to suddenly deal with this reality. So we have different strategies over here, but what really is important is twofold. One, to have the technical ability to pull off a work from home arrangement for your employees. And secondly, having the trust in the workforce. So we're going to talk a lot about it in the section when we talk about what is the role of a leader. But before that, let's see what's actually happening. What is the data saying to us? A lot of us need to actually see this data and identify what is happening. Where is the level of preparedness for most of the organizations? This here is the survey report from the Business Continuity Institute. This is just the report from last week. It's not a very old report. And as you will see, most of the organizations are actually very, very unprepared when it comes to implementing a working remote work policy for their employees. A lot of the basic measures like roster working, etc., are also not implemented by 50% of the organizations. And this is a global survey. We have, in this survey, they have taken about 630 companies from across 73 countries and 20 industries. So it's very, very broad survey. And across that also, if you will see, a lot of the organizations are actually struggling with a lot of decisions to be taken. The organizations have actually had to take a hard look at how their businesses will function while their employees are quarantined. They are not allowed to go out. So how will the business continuity happen? And the reality is that this is what we are in today. There are going to be innumerable people challenges that we together as a community have to move on with. And like all the other crises, this too is going to pass. So very quickly, if we move into our role as a business leader, if you are a business owner, if you're an HR leader, this section is of extremely important value for you, because I'm sure you would be facing a lot of unprecedented decisions, whether to allow work from home in the first place, to count it as leave, what are the guidelines around it, what are the other companies in your industry doing, and very importantly, how to manage the business continuity around it, and what will be the long-term impact of such changes. In the next few slides, I have given 5-step checklist which will help you in preparing your organization to not only flexibly respond to this potential disruption that remote working brings, but also help you use this as an opportunity to reimagine the work broadly, because at one point of time, this crisis will end. And that is when you would be able to use these learnings and reimagine your work in a way that it is much more effective. The first step in the checklist is to acknowledge. And that's where the data also showed us. A lot of organizations are just hoping and praying that they don't have to face this reality for a very long time. A 10-day, 14-day lockdown or a quarantine is not something which organizations are prepared for. If the quarantine period actually expands to a little bit larger than that, they cannot just ask the employees to take a laptop and go away at home and work wherever they can. They need a much stronger strategy as compared to that. The first step to do as a business leader is to create a cross-functional, gather a set of leaders, business leaders that you have, your next line, who are cross-functional across business, IT, HR, communications, and facilities. Let them start thinking of different scenarios where you will need to action, where you will need to respond to employees, where you will need to optimize executions. And what are the kind of gaps that you have? Come back together and brainstorm on a very, very proactive basis. And oftentimes you will realize that the solution which one department doesn't have, the other will have. Cross-functional teams will be able to move over these gaps very, very quickly. For example, HR may not have a solution for employees working from home unless IT provides them with the tools required. So that's the key, to create a cross-functional team and get them brainstorming on problems very, very quickly. The second thing, and this is something that we don't very often do, is the job role review. Now, this is not just a regular job evaluation or a job description. This will require you as a leader to map out the jobs and tasks which will get affected over the next few weeks of quarantine, of working from home. Get your business leaders and HR leaders together and identify these jobs into 3 main buckets. First, what are the jobs that can be done, even partially, without a physical presence in the workplace? Second, what are the jobs which cannot be done, even somewhat, without actually having the people coming to the office? And third, jobs that you're unsure about. Now have a very, very hard look at the third category. Can you break some assumptions that over here and actually move these jobs from unsure to the first category of partially can be done from a remote place? This is where it's going to be the real changer, because the second category, see if you're going to be able to move a lot of the jobs into the first, but there will be some, like your workmen who have to come and work on a particular machine in the factory. If the factory is not producing essential items, chances are that it's not going to be operation and the workmen will not be able to come to work. Those are the jobs which you can't do much about. It's the first and the third category which is really, really important at this stage. And challenge any assumptions that you may have with your team. There are many jobs. A very simple example could be of just your executive assistants, your PAs. For years, people have thought that these are the roles who have to be physically present in office. That's the nature of their job. They have to be present around the executive whom they are assisting. But all of us have seen how efficiently people can work and assist the executives while working in a remote location. So understand the business model and see what kind of tools can be changed. The next is the third step, which you have to do with your IT team. Audit the infrastructure. And a lot of the ITS organizations were ahead of the curve because they had this audit of the infrastructure already with them. If you don't, this is a good time to understand what are the gaps in the access, in the adoption of different tools, whether hardware or software. Make sure that you know the comfort level of your employees and do not try to introduce a new tool which they're not comfortable with without any trainings or opportunities for demo. Use tools like Zoom to give them a demo if you have tools which they have to use from, for example, if there is an accounting tool or an SAP which they have to use from home and everybody doesn't have exposure of using it in a remote working setup. So understand that mastery when they are working from home is going to take that amount of time and buffer it into your plans, into this checklist. We will also revisit a lot of the productivity tools in the last segment. But at this stage, it's very important for you to understand what are the kind of policies and guidelines you want to have around it. Maybe your data card needs a little bit of a ramp up. Your SIM, if you have company usage groups, they may have a little bit of ramp up because employees are working at home. They may not have such a good Wi-Fi connectivity. You want to ramp up and give them a better connectivity. What about employees in manufacturing setups who don't have laptops? Supervisors, etc. They could be employees in BPOs who don't have laptops because they're working in desktops with the customers. You will have to find out the policies for using smartphones. What is it that you want to tell them? It has to be very, very clear. Can they use their personal devices and their phones, their smartphones and the tabs for business calls, for calls with clients? What kind of apps can they download which will not violate with your data security policies? Have a complete checklist with your IT prepared and circulated as quickly as possible when it comes to your infrastructure. The fourth is communication protocol, and I cannot overemphasize the importance of communication. This is something I'm going to keep revisiting over and over again during this webinar because these are confusing times, and understand that these are confusing times for everybody, not just for us as business leaders who are taking decisions, but also for employees. So if they do not get clear, consistent, frequent communication, they will feel lost. Out of sight is out of mind, and it really, really works true for remote workers. So having a protocol really helps. Now, what do I mean by a protocol? It should clearly identify how to talk to people, how are they going to reach people, have all the contact information in one place, for example. What kind of primary channels of communication can be used? Can we use emails only for official channels? Can we use WhatsApp for unofficial chatter? Can you have productivity tools like Slack? Do your data security policies allow? The last thing that you want is that different teams in your organization are using different communication tools and different frequencies around it. And everybody who's talking to each other is having a different experience. That's the last thing that you want. Remember, even if we are working from home, it's still an organization. It's still organized, and you want things to be centrally driven as far as communication is concerned. You want to make sure that the communication to employees about how they're going to reach out to their customers is very, very clear if you have a customer-facing role for your employees working at home. How do the teams coordinate and meet? What frequency? Do you want to keep a video huddle in the morning and every team has to follow the same process? How are the minutes going to be captured? How are the notes going to be shared? Documents shared, data security, all of those things come under your communication protocol. The quicker you get this done, the quicker it's going to be for the employees to adapt. and make sure that employees are having a two-way mechanism, which is clear and transparent and open, so that they're able to share and voice their opinions, concerns, fears, and doubts also at this point of time. Last but not the least, this is something which is there on everybody's mind. I think it's been bothering a lot of people, and we keep getting a lot of questions around this, and that is identifying performance measures. Now, when you have employees working from home, how do you really know what is the performance metric to apply? As an organization, be very, very clear about the goals that we are chasing. Especially we're sitting at the end of the fiscal year for most of the organizations. Typically, April is when many of you would be starting a new financial year. So it's a good time to revisit your goals. Priorities may need to be altered, targets may need to be revised because of the current situations. Business is taking a different turn. So in the short term, the ground rule has to be that the deliverables has to become broad-based rather than task-based. Your performance measures have to be based on broader deliverables, not making sure that the employee is online for 9 hours, for example. Trusting in them that they are going to be able to deliver wherever they are, however they are going to be, and coming back to you if they are facing challenges is very, very important. Having said that, there is a definite need for checks and balances, for creating a support mechanism when employees need, but make sure that there is enough room and enough empowerment or flexibility for the employee to be able to work from home, because they're also grappling in this. They're also working from home for the first time, and they have multiple priorities to be dealing with at the same time. So maybe you want to change a few things around and say performance is also going to be measured on integrity, on sticking up for the team, on, for example, picking up extra slack if somebody is unwell. These are actions and behaviors that you want to relook and you want to motivate at this point of time, maybe. Because remember, as leaders, this is a very good opportunity for you to understand what kind of behaviors do you really want to promote in your organization. And it's a great time to gently start those behaviors through the work from home arrangement. These times of global crisis like the COVID-19, they are scary, they can be disruptive, they can be very confusing for everyone. But if we plan well and nothing happens, then at the minimum, you have a very organized, a very flexible, responsive team ready for whenever there is a next challenge. So keep these 5 pointers in mind for the leaders. Very quickly, we're going to move into the next segment, which is the role of a HR business partner. Now, HR business partners have been sharing a lot of concerns and questions because they are really in the line of fire from the employees and the business. There are guidelines and policies that are being created, but there are multiple questions, etc., which go on around that, because when the rubber hits the road, the questions start arising. The employees are going to come back to them with multiple questions, doubts, and insecurities. So this is an unprecedented situation for everybody, and there is no rule book which an HR business partner can go back to. So that's the reason why that this particular section has been structured a little bit differently by us, and it's a little bit more interactive to help you bring forth your questions, doubts, and challenges. We're going to do a small poll in the beginning to understand the baseline about where we are in terms of work from home guidelines. When we get the poll results, I'm going to share them with you, and I will encourage you in the meantime to start using the chat window and post your specific questions and concerns. While we do that, in the meantime, I will also be sharing a few guidelines, some advisories that other organizations have posted, and you can see them as sample or inspiration, and you can draw the bits from there which works for your organization. I'll also be sharing some best practices, a sample work from home policy, and a model that you can use to structure your own discussions with business and employees during these times. Right? So very quickly, I'm just going to initiate a poll. And I see that there are a few questions coming into the chat. Thank you so much for those. When you see the poll on your screen, you can start submitting your answers. When we have the results, I will share the consolidation with you. This is an anonymous poll, so feel free to share your views on this. Okay, great. We're getting quite a few results now. Okay, so while we are still getting the results, we've got 56% results in. I'm just going to quickly show you. I will quickly show you some of these advisories. Can all of you see these advisories, or is the screen blocked? Let me know on the chat window. Pramod, you're not able to see the polling questions on the screen right now? Try refreshing your screen, and maybe you get this. Okay, great. So these are some of the guidelines that some organizations have used. If you see, these are more in the form of an advisory. What are the best practices? What are the nice to do things that you can do? They're very gentle and very, very eased in. Don't worry if they are not very legible at this stage. I will be sharing these with all of you at the end of this webinar, along with a copy of this presentation. And I will also be sharing with you a sample work from home policy that we have created at Gateways Global. So I'm just going to end the polling here. Has everybody been able to submit their polls? I'll take another 10 seconds maybe and then end the polling and show you the results. Okay, great. All right, just give me a thumbs up if you're able to see these results being shared on the screen right now. If you can just give me a thumbs up or a yes or on the chat window if you are able to see the results. Okay, yes, all right, great, great. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. So if you see, we have established kind of a baseline here that most of us, around 65% of us, are already there in implementing a work from home policy, which is pretty much total for the employees, which means it's covering most of your workforce. 18% still have a partial work from home policy, and another 18% are not yet there. Pre-existing work from home policy existed for just 18%. So which means that 65% of you have actually gone ahead and created a work from home policy at this point of time, which is really amazing. It just goes to show how much these challenging times can get the best from us. And the last question was, when considering employee eligibility to work remotely, what aspects have we considered? And this was a multiple choice question, so there could be more than one response. We have mostly considered the employees' jobs and duties, which is wonderful. A lot of organizations also choose to consider the travel history of employees and selectively place employees to work from home because of the at-risk cases. Pre-existing health conditions is a large, significant 29%, because these again are the at-risk employees whom you do not want to come to work in this particular current scenario. So great, thank you so much for that. I'm going to stop sharing these results and move back to my presentation, where I will show you a small work from home policy that we have created. Okay. Right, just give me a minute and I will. There we are. I hope all of you are able to see the screen now and you're able to see this work from home policy template. It's completely customizable. It's a Word document that we will be sharing with you at the end of this webinar today. We have broadly covered a few areas here which are pertinent. One is the broad purpose and the philosophy around the policy. And that, of course, covers the background of the COVID-19 scare. And if you want to use it on a larger level and keep it as a policy, you can give your organizational context to it. If you want to use it immediately to launch the work from home policy for your organization, this is a ready reckoner for you. Then we have also covered some of the objectives, which is to uphold the health and safety of employees at this point of time and reduce the physical footprint, have social distancing, maintain business continuity and therefore working from home and not just to leave. And we have given a section when you can cover about the duration as well as the scope of employees who fall into a mandatory category. We have also kept a discretionary category and an exempt category. Now you can use this according to your business model. If you have such categories, you can feel free to use them or remove them. Finally, we've also covered some leave-in attendance formalities, which a lot of business owners, HR leaders have been asking us for. What kind of leave-in attendance monitoring can be built in? We've also talked about some of the equipment requirements which can be mandatory for working from home, and some broad policy elements, as well as some proper etiquette for working from home. A lot of your employees would be working from home for the first time, so it's really good to give them a quick thought starters about this is how you can work your etiquette around it. To close, we've talked about the other employment terms, that it will not be changed because of this work from home arrangement, and any other changes will be communicated separately. So I will be sharing this with you at the end of the webinar. I'll quickly just move back to my presentation again. Right. All right. So with this as background, I'm now going to just share with you the HR business partner's role. And a lot of you have been sharing questions around around check-ins, etc. And we will talk about this in the next section as well as in the break that we take after this segment. You may be surprised to see the Maslow's need hierarchy here when I'm talking about the HR business partner's role. The reason here is because when I was trying to structure this together and I was seeing what kind of questions and doubts and confusions the HR business partners are facing, it's a quick realization that there is no one size fit all. The organization cultures are very different. The business models are so different that organizations, they would ladder up differently. So some organizations would actually be really, really open to work from home. They may already have a culture of employees working remotely sometimes or often. Others may be more conservative or traditional in their approach. Yet others may not even have a business model which can allow them to work from home. So this is not the time when we as HR business partners can go around rebuilding cultures. This is the time when we have to stand up with the business and make sure that we are able to respond to whatever they need. And their needs could be at various levels. So that's why, to make it very simple, I have used a model that we are all very familiar with. And I'm going to take you through all of these at one stage or the other. What this really means is we start at the very bottom and make sure that the hygiene is met. And then we start laddering up depending on the organization's readiness and the employee needs. To make it clear, let me just show you what I mean. The first one is physiological, which means the very hygiene and basic needs are met. Your business is going to be definitely asking you about time, attendance, leave policies. How are you going to actually be able to monitor? I see a question also over here in the chat about how do you monitor the fact that people are doing what they're doing. They're actually working remotely and they're not struggling with their work remotely. So what kind of policies do you want to put in? It all depends upon your organization, the work that they are doing, what kind of technological setup you have. You may choose to have a simple WhatsApp group. You may choose to have a tracker, an Excel sheet tracker, which you share with the team leaders. Team leaders in turn cascade it further, and then everybody fills up the tracker, which comes back to you, and you collate it as an input for payroll. You may just have a culture which says, these are difficult times and we trust that you're all working as long as your deliverables are met, and you leave it attendance at that. Or you may take the mid route and say, all right, we have a little bit of a system like an HRMS, or you look at some of the tools that are online, like some of the productivity tools I'll be sharing in a little bit of a while. And you use these tools to let the employees clock in their attendance. The thing to be noted here is, while you are still meeting the hygiene factors, make sure you leave that room for trust and for that flexibility like we talked about earlier. And the employees are not feeling all monitored 24 hours. So that's the last thing that you really want to do. So that's the kind of counseling that you can do over here when you're talking about physiological, but which route you want to take really will depend upon your business model and the business readiness and any other technology tools that you already have at this stage. But important thing is, do not let this ball drop, because this is very, very important. So communicate about this very clearly to your employees as a business partner. The second thing which is important here is the next ladder of safety. This becomes extremely pertinent at a time like this when people are scared. They're scared not just for their health and the family's health, they're also scared about their jobs. People are not sure. This is unprecedented, a work from home for the entire organization. There are organizations indulging in job cuts, it's a prerogative on the HR business partner to communicate very clearly about the organization's stand before they hear about it from anybody else. So ensuring that there is enough security and continuity in the job is the second role that the HR business partner has to play in this. The second part of safety, like I touched upon earlier, is the health of the employee and the family members. You can have your emailers ready in advance, send out those regular guidelines about how to stay protected from COVID-19. Reiterate the fact that working from home doesn't mean that you can actually have a party on the weekend, because you have to maintain the norms of social distancing even when you're working from home. So maintaining safety is also a really important role which HR business partners will have to do at this point of time. Some best practices that organizations are taking up, which I can share with you, are they are having extended sick leave benefits. They are having benefits extended to family members. They're also dabbling in exploring if they can start the employee assistance programs. Many organizations offer this to their employees. Some organizations are also taking it a step further and sharing resources with employees about mental health, stress management, and taking care of yourself during isolation. So these are some of the global best practices which you can note and see whichever fits your model, you can possibly use them there. The third part is belongingness, the third ladder in the Maslow's hierarchy. Now, how can an HR business partner really work on belongingness? The simple line over here is communication. Communication has to flow from one point of contact. Otherwise, the employee who is in a distance is going to get confused about the authenticity of the guidelines which are being shared in these uncertain times, and also start believing in WhatsApp rumors and other, virtual gossip, as I would call it. So make sure that you have one person communicating. If you are managing a group of, say, 50 employees, only you are going to send the communication to that group of 50 employees and nobody else in the team. Keep the channel open for reverse flow of communication. If they have any doubts that they want to get cleared up, see if you can set up a helpline or a hot box where they can drop in their queries and have them answered. FAQs is a great time to launch at this time as well. And it's the time when they're not physically present in office, so the need for communication cannot be overemphasized. A very useful tip here is to set a frequency. How frequently are you going to be communicating with the employees? What are you going to talk to them about? Prepare mailers in advance, which have to be standardized across all business partners. So you are sending the same mailer as another counterpart in another business with the same similar content. Make sure you're in regular touch with them. You may also need to call a few at-risk employees at a preset frequency. That's a very good best practice, because you just want to remind them about the safety guidelines, about how to stay healthy if they are at high risk. Next ladder here is on esteem. Now, we've always looked at esteem in forms of reward and recognition, but I want to take a different angle over here. And I want to talk about esteem from a point of view of both employees who are working at home and employees who are not working at home. For some of you who may have manufacturing setups producing essential items, your operations may still be continuing. Your operations may not have stopped, and you will have employees who are still coming into work, and those employees will be scared. They will be worried about their health, the health of their family members. How do you create a sense of esteem, a sense of pride for those members who are coming into the workplace to help your business continuity planning? How do you create a sense of esteem of workers who are not coming to work to ensure that this group is not getting impacted or exposed to the disease? So creating that sense and using a lot of innovative practices is also really important. But the baseline is to be very, very transparent in your communication again. Be clear in defining which employee group can work from home and cannot work from home, and what is the criteria for defining this. Leaving everything to manager discretion can cause a lot of disclarity, can cause a lot of subjectivity and biases, and you don't want that there. So make sure that the baseline that you're covering is to be very clear in your transparency. And one above that is to Use innovative practices like sharing celebrations, like talking about people who are coming to work and what is it that they're doing. They are practicing social distancing while at work. Having small praises being shared across the team, those kinds of innovative practices is something which is very important. The next and the last one, but very, very important at this stage, is self-actualization, which we typically see in the sense of finding a purpose. But here it's very important when the employees are away, how do you motivate and engage these employees? How do you make sure that they are motivated, they don't feel a sense of loneliness, isolation, being out of sight from work? And if your organization feels ready, start counseling your managers on what kind of practices they can engage in so that they can reduce disengagement, they can reduce fear, they can reduce a lack of motivation at this point of time. The next segment on your role as a line manager will talk a lot about the engagement and motivation as well. So you can take tips from there and apply it here when you're counseling your managers. I'll not repeat those tips, but consider this very, very strongly, because this is what is going to help your business come back on track when things normalize. Okay, so that's a lot of content to go through, and we've seen a lot of questions also coming up. So I'm going to take a quick pause and look at some of your questions here. One of the questions which has come up is what are the different best practices on monitoring the work from home progress? So I'm going to share a lot of these in the next two sections on line managers and productivity tools. But a quick answer to that is video huddles. Make sure that you have a daily rhythm, that the teams coming up together in the morning on a video call and sharing their progress with each other and the team manager. That really works very well. Weekly reports work very, very well, so that everybody is aligned on what has happened and what kind of a project status are we at this point of time. So apart from that, another question that has come up is on, I think Ajesh, you wanted me to repeat the preparedness checklist, the 5-pointer guideline that I had shared with you earlier. The 5 points really were to acknowledge that this has happened and create a cross-functional team. The second was to create a job role review and see which roles can be and cannot be operated remotely. The third was to audit your infrastructure with IT and close any gaps that you may have in the IT policy working remotely. The fourth was about the communication protocol and having a lot of clarity about which tools to use, what frequency, and especially with customers if you have any. And the fifth was on identifying the performance measures. And here we talked about being very clear if you want to revise your deliverables, and you also want to include a few behavioral deliverables at this stage. Right. Any other questions at this point of time before we move in to the next segment? All right, so we'll have another break for more questions at the end. You can keep posting more, and we will move into the third part, which is your role as a line manager. So if you are managing remote teams, and if you're doing this for the first time, it's a very tricky situation, because for the employee, you are the face of the organization, and you are the entirety of what is happening in the office. They're not going to office, they're not interacting enough with their colleagues, they're not having open houses and team meetings, etc. So you are really the face of the organization, and the motivation of these employees, their productivity and efficiency, and how your business runs depends entirely on how you manage these remote workers. The simple 3 parts best practices that I will be sharing with you are in the next few slides. The first And very simple need is to define the expectation. Call it out that this is a new situation that we are dealing with, and so we need new rules over here. And people would typically learn a lot from context. If they are in the office and they see you behaving in a certain way with a team member, they would start behaving in a certain way. But then here there is no context. So you have to make sure that your expectations are very, very clearly defined. Be crystal clear if you want certain, like we were talking about, progress notes. So if you want a weekly report, be clear about what time on Friday it should reach your inbox. In what format? Do you want it to happen in a certain template? Do you want the entire team to send it in a template, or you want everybody to send it to one member who collates it and sends it to you? So those are small things. Excuse me. Those are small things which you have to think through as a team leader. You have to pay a lot of attention to the small details, really put yourself in their shoes and think about what kind of doubts would they be having in when they're working from home. Very clearly tell them how frequently are you going to talk to them, how frequently is, so one is probably just your daily huddle in the morning when you want to do that. Apart from that, how frequently are you going to be calling them, or do you not call them and the rest of the conversation during the day happens on Slack or WhatsApp or your Microsoft Link or whichever productivity tool you're using, if you're using Trello or Jira or whichever type of tool you're using. Are these people comfortable using the tool? If they're not, do you want to take a little demo online and show them how they can use these tools, and if they have any questions around it, so that later they don't fumble and miss the deadlines? As it is, by working remotely, a lot of the business is getting impacted. The last thing we need is people being unclear about their expectations and not meeting the deadlines when they actually could have from home. So while we are at this stage, we need to be very clear in defining the review mechanisms also, right? Weekly reports, structured daily check-ins are the best way to do it. Having a coaching call on a one-on-one basis with the individuals is also a very, very important thing to do. At least once in a week, you should connect one-on-one with every team member of yours and have a coaching call. What's working well, what's not working well, and what kind of support do they need here. The second very important role for you as a line manager is to build trust. Take this opportunity to take the trust level of your team to the next stage, because these are very, very uncertain times. People are very worried about what's happening. So managers can do 2 or 3 things to make sure that the trust gets strengthened. One, individualize. Every individual is different. Somebody may need a more flexible work because they have kids at home. Somebody may need a little bit more work because they're just worried about things, or they just can't sit still. So individualize as per your team members, and make sure that there are frequent conversations. Also, a very good tip here is to build a line of sight. So a very effective way that a lot of managers that I have worked with have used this is by using the first 5 minutes of a video call for a personal chat, for just personal connectivity. How are things? How's family doing? How are the kids doing? How are you managing? It's just 5 minutes on a personal front. Take the next 5 to 10 minutes to share updates on a larger organization, business, industry level, because this gives them a good line of sight and they feel connected to the business. They feel as if they are also part of something big and not just doing something on their laptop sitting in a remote place. Then the third part is when you talk about your work, your deliverables, your targets, progress status, etc. And some managers also take it to the next level and they encourage questions from the team during the video calls. If they have any questions about business continuity, about what is going to happen to the organization. You may not always have all the questions with you at this point of time in the call, but that's good to have the questions out in the open and on the table. At least you know what's going on in their mind and what kind of concerns and worries they are facing. And if there are questions that you can come back to at a later stage in the next video call or in your instant messaging, feel free to do that as well. It's a very, very important thing to hold the team together, to stick them together, and they should have the confidence that they are able to talk to you about all their concerns and worries. The third thing is about motivation, and before we got into this webinar, a lot of you shared questions about how do we engage remote teams, what do we tell managers about best practices to motivate their teams, about engaging their teams. The first thing for you to remember is that all the elements of job satisfaction which apply for a physical team also apply for a remote team. They also need human connect. They also need motivation and satisfaction from their job. They also need praise and celebration. And this is layered up with the unique challenge that they are actually in a different location. So the basic step, like we have been talking about so far, have a daily rhythm. Make sure you have a structured mechanism of engagement, a structured check-in in the morning, a weekly call, a weekly coaching call. So those basic hygiene steps have to be ensured. Some innovative practices that other organizations are engaging in at this point of time, and I would like to share these with you, are some organizations and some managers are also conducting what's called virtual parties. So just once in a week on a Friday afternoon, they'll get together and have a little party. They'll just, come on a video call, and all of them will just say, all right, we're just going to make a cup of tea and at our own desks, and we'll share a cup of tea. And just chat about usual stuff, not work-related stuff. So encourage that kind of social chatter, what we call our water cooler chats. And that's really important to keep the human connect going. Another best practice is to celebrate birthdays, milestones, anniversaries, work anniversaries. These are all going to fall in the next 2 to 6 weeks when we are going to be quarantined at home. So celebrate those, because they will really not have a chance to go out and celebrate with anybody else. So it's going to be a little weird to be having those celebrations, but it's okay, because everybody is going to be in this together, and it just adds a lot of excitement to the whole thing. Giving public praises. So even if there is a small achievement or a small deliverable that the team has met, public praises is, it goes a long way in building motivation and engagement for the team. Engaging people who are also not coming to office is equally important as engaging people who are coming to the office. So bringing the two folks together and creating that level of empathy for each other and the kind of challenges that both of them are facing is really, really important. Some of the other things that you can do as managers is also to have your HR conduct some sessions for them, some trainings, to ensure that if the workload is a little bit less, they are engaging in self-development at this point of time. You can yourself suggest some courses that all of you as a team can perhaps do, like a 2-hour webinar or a 2-hour course or a MOOC on Coursera that you all as a team do together. And then you can have another half-an-hour session of a review, and you share your peer learnings about what you thought was interesting and what aspects of that learning session could you apply to your team. It's also a very good time. Another best practice is that teams are using to work on productivity projects which were put on the back burner because they never had time. But this is the time when, if the workload is less for your teams, then start brainstorming on how can we make our work more efficient, and can we work on that particular project when things come back to normal. So when things do come back to normal, you have a whole charter laid out and you have your work cut out and ready to move into action. So those are the ways that you can keep your team looking forward to some things in this regard. Also share the basic etiquettes with them, which I will be sharing in the next segment. So once you do that, everybody in the same segment, everybody talking about the etiquettes is also going to be a big motivator for the teams. Now, with that, we move into this next segment, which I was talking to you about, the work from home etiquettes. This is specifically important for those of you who are individuals, professionals, who are working remotely at home. What kind of best practices can we share, and what is it that we need to watch out for? I'm going to share with you a small video. I'm assuming a lot of you have been listening to a lot of this content. So I'm going to share a small video with you at this stage. Just give me a moment while I reset and share my page. Okay, can everybody see this? Can you just give me a little thumbs up on the chat window so that if everybody is able to see it, I will start playing this. Okay, great. So I'm able to see some yeses coming from everybody. Great. So time to roll into the video. This is the video from the World Economic Forum. They have recently created this video when people have started working from home, and we are talking about some of the best tips from remote workers. Right. I hope it gave you some idea about the kind of tips that we are going to be sharing in the next section. And I'm just going to switch back to my normal presentation here. Okay. So that gave you a quick overview about what is it that people globally are talking about when it comes to work from home etiquette and some of the best practices. Let me take you through some of the key points which that video also highlighted and some of the additional points from the research. Very importantly, and this is something which we do not pay attention to, is infrastructure. Now, you are your own facilities manager, your own IT manager, your own HR manager when you're working from home. So you want to get this right. You want to make sure that you pay close attention to the place that you're working in. Have a comfortable area, a steady desk, a comfortable chair, which you're working with, and you're able to keep your elbows on the table so that it's ergonomically fit. If you don't have such a study table or something, a dining table works very well for these needs. So make sure that there is enough, table space for you to keep your things over. With regards to your infrastructure, your laptop, please make sure that you maintain it absolutely well. Boot it at least once in a day. Switch it down, switch it off, and then restart it the next morning. It's going to give you a mental restart as well as giving maintenance to your laptop as well. At this point of time, when your IT is already overwhelmed with work from home requirements and bandwidth and other things, the last thing that they can deal with is a broken down laptop. So make sure that you have your UPS in place when you have a Wi-Fi router. Your data card is in place. It has enough limit. A very useful tip somebody shared with me is when you have video calls, just plan it out with your family members, because you may need your kids using Netflix and your spouse having his own or her own video calls. You don't want it to be clashing. You don't want the bandwidth to be clashing. So those are very, very small attention to detail things which you can keep in mind, and make sure that the productivity increases when you're working from home. If you don't have a set of earplugs already, use the ones which which come along with your mobile phones. They are usually noise reduction, so it will reduce the noise, and it's going to be much more comfortable for the person listening on the other end. Also, don't hold the phone in your hand or worse in your shoulder and type while you're doing that, because if you're going to be doing this for a long time, then you need to be absolutely fit to do this. On the next thing is about time management, and this is something again a lot of people struggle with if they are working from home. It's an either end of the spectrum. Time management is really important, because either you end up working the entire time if you're working from home, or you don't end up getting anything done at all. You don't want to be on either of those two ends. So before going to bed, make a list of things that you want to achieve the next day. What is the tasks that you want to do? You have video calls, you have client meetings, you have some documents to fill up, you have data sheets to fill up. What all things you want to achieve the next day. Make a list of things done, and also add your personal to-do list to it, and then see how you're going to fit everything into it. A very useful technique many remote workers swear by is called the Pomodoro technique. And this means that it's a method of time management. You can read about this. This broadly means that you break your working day into 25-minute chunks. Every chunk is followed by a 5-minute break. So if you're working for a very, very long time at the laptop or on a call, it is going to be not beneficial or not productive for you. And so it's very important to use the time management techniques. Also create boundaries, or a psychological sag, like we call it. So sometimes, you just start working the moment you get out of bed in the morning because there's something playing in your mind. That's the first thing that throws your day out of gear. Get up in the morning the way that you would do on a normal day. Get dressed, have breakfast, ensure your coffee breaks are at the same time as you would have it during your office hours. Keep time aside for meal with family, and make sure that your breaks with the family are all planned rather than unplanned, because they will also need your attention. And very importantly, work out. A very important thing that people miss out when they're working from home is not able to manage the time in such a way that they make time for their own physical movement. A simple rule of thumb that I follow is having 250 steps an hour every hour, and that's enough for your workout. Even if you're not able to go out, walk, jog, yoga, if you're not able to do any of those things, just have a 250 step routine every hour, and that's enough for you to start with. Finally, treat this like a real job. Don't forget, one day this crisis is going to be over and you're going to all go back to your workplaces, and then it's going to hurt to come back to work if you do not follow as close a routine as you do on a normal day. So get up in the morning at the same time as you do, dress the way that you normally do, exercise, bathe, have your breakfast, keep your body in the same rhythm as it was earlier. And that is the most important takeaway that you could have from this segment. The next segment is for the three main watch outs of remote working and how do we deal with these. Research has suggested that these are the three main problems that remote workers face when they are working from home. The first, and I think most of you would be nodding your heads right now, is balancing home and work. Especially at this time when the schools are closed, kids are at home, spouses are at home. For some of us, maids are also not coming in. How do you balance the home and work? Everybody needs attention. So the best thing to do is plan for it. Make sure you are talking to everybody, telling them this is my timetable for the day tomorrow. How do you fit in other things? Having a roster is really, really important in a house so that you can spend time with the kids, you can spend time on your work, you can spend time on your own exercise and activities. The second thing which is really important is your mindset to flex your work. A lot of people I have spoken to, they would start their work really early in the morning. So they would start their work, say like 7 o'clock in the morning, get a lot of the data, work, documentation, such work done before the kids get up, tend to only the urgent calls during the day and work the rest after the kids are in bed. Excuse me. Right, sorry about this. These days people are scared to be coughing, but this was more because I've been talking for quite some time. Okay. The second item in research is people are really worried about loneliness, isolation. Fortunately, in India, we have family support, but still, excuse me, but still, if you're feeling a little isolated because of the work, a couple of tips here is to spend at least 2 hours having real conversations with people, whether professional or non-professional. The more physical it seems, for example, a video call, the better it is. Also, if your manager hasn't set up that kind of a daily routine with you or a rhythm like we were talking about, suggest one to your manager so that you ensure that there is some sort of physical or a human-to-human connect that's happening. All right. And the third item, which is there on the research, so this is the research by a brand development agency called Buffer, which researched about 2,500 remote workers. It found creativity being third on the list of the challenges that is faced by remote workers. Many of us will be working in areas which requires a lot of brainstorming and a lot of ideation, which typically happens in meetings with colleagues, a lot of creative thinking which happens on whiteboard or even water cooler chats. Research suggests that working in isolation has a major impact on creativity, and you can deal with this by using your time at home for self-development. Use virtual productivity tools, which we will talk about in the next section, where you can brainstorm and thrash ideas. And more importantly, exercise. That is supposed to have the major impact on your creativity juices. Just go out, get some fresh air. That's completely allowed as long as you keep a safe distance from everybody. That is really important to clear your head off for fresher ideas. And it's also very important when you're locked in home. So moving out is a very, very important thing. And with this, we enter into our third segment for the day, which is on productivity tools. I've been referring to these tools multiple times during the session today. So here we are. I'm going to break them up into three essential buckets. If you are a business who is dealing with work from home, you really need to have three main buckets of tools. The first one is a video conference bucket. Choose from any of these tools, and I'm going to share a copy of this presentation with you, or you can write this down somewhere. Whichever of these suits you well. We have Zoom, which we're using now. It's my personal favorite because it gives you a lot of functionality, including your polls and chats and sharing screens and a lot of other things. Skype is something which is already introduced by many organizations. The others are a lot of upcoming startup tools. A lot of them are free, which you can explore as well. And Link for Business is another one which many organizations also would use. The second bucket is an instant messaging bucket. Now, a lot of organizations don't have a culture of instant messaging. They would either use your SMS, or they would just have one-on-one WhatsApp or a small group. But instant messaging becomes really important because when people are working from home, there are boundaries, and you can't really just pick up the phone and call, or just, you can't shout across the bay and say, hey, you know what, I need this. So instant messaging is really important. And you may tell your employees that we are going to be available on video conference at, once in the morning from 9 to 10. Emails you should check maybe every 1 hour, but instant messaging is instant. So if you receive a message on instant messaging, please do respond to it instantly. And that really helps. I know this slide is not very clear, but I'm going to share these with you. My personal favorite is Slack, which really helps you to create different groups in your team. So if you're a project manager who's managing different projects, you can have different threads running for conversations in Slack. You can take a little demo on Slack or let us know. We can organize one for you, which is really, really important. Skype, Hangouts, WhatsApp, Telegram, if you have a large group, or if you want, a group of over 200 employees connected on one channel, which is giving information. For example, if you're a business partner, Telegram is a very important tool. WhatsApp has a limit of around 200, 250 members in one group, which Telegram doesn't. So Telegram, you can go up to, I think, 1,000. Similarly, GroupMe, Messenger, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, if your organization allows. So those are some of the other IM apps. And last but not the least, you need a collaboration platform. Where do people put in their information? So if they are working on, say, a document, do they put it on Google Docs? Do they put it on Slack, on Trello, on Asana? Do they use your Office 365 tools or OneDrive? These are some of the collaboration platforms that are commonly used by organizations today to make sure that everything is in one place and controlled, and you have a controlled copy of the documents that people are working on. Otherwise, when you come back to your normal work scenario, documents are going to have different versions sitting in different computers, making it very difficult to sync if you don't have a version attached to it. So keep that in mind and foresee how things are going to come back and collaborate. Right. So with this, we have covered three large segments today. We've talked about our roles as leaders, as HR business partners. We've talked about our roles as team managers. We've talked about what kind of etiquettes can we handle in work from home. And we've also talked about some of the challenges and ways to deal with them. And finally, we've shared some productivity tools, very brief glimpse about these tools. A question that also came to me before this was, how do we choose these tools? So if I have to choose any of the productivity apps or collaboration tools, how do we choose them really? The simple answer to that, and my thumb rule, is pick the lowest hanging fruit. do not try and be very ambitious. Don't try and go for the best possible tool, because people need to get adapted to it. And take the tool which people are most easy with. So if your organization is already using Skype, go with Skype on all the platforms. If your organization is already using Office 365, go with Microsoft Link and Office 365, and do not try to experiment with a new tool at this point of time, because then it's going to have a new learning curve attached to it as well. But that doesn't stop you from exploring all of the others and seeing what is the best that you can do at this point of time. Maybe your organization is open to accepting or has a real need for such tools. So keep yourself open. Those are the two real points which I would say here in response to this question. With this, we are just going to be moving into the question and answer round. And I'm going to take your question and answers on the chat window. Okay, so there's a question from Sindhu. If there is one good platform to opt in case a decision has to be taken on certain pressing concerns. So if you are, so I'm assuming you're referring to something which is more confidential as compared to these open platforms. Now, as compared to these, it is a very good tool to be used over here is just to have a one-on-one on Zoom with a closed group. That's a very good platform to use in case you have to take a decision, because when it comes to key decisions being taken, you need to really understand the body language of people as well, if they're all comfortable in the changes that are being suggested. So the best thing to do is have a video conferencing tool like Zoom to bring everybody on a closed platform. Chitra, what's the most appropriate tool that I can use instead of a whiteboard? I would say instant messaging tools like Slack. They are very, very useful. You can share your thoughts. You can share the work that you've done, which are draft or work in progress. You can have different threads attached to it for different conversations, and you can also annotate on the same. So I would highly recommend using Slack. How do I monitor if my team member is really focusing on work, and will he or she be able to complete the work in time? A couple of things here that we need to do in terms of monitoring is, so if your organization culture or your business model so requires that you need to know if the employee has logged in those number of hours. Excel sheets, trackers like I talked about earlier are very useful. You can also have certain tools like Trello and Jira, which are going to help you in monitoring how much you're going to be able to, how much time the employees are spending on these. And the second part of your question is, would they be able to complete the work in time? That is something that is entirely dependent on the review mechanism that the manager puts in place. So having constant check-ins every morning, if you're having some documents or some progress reports being shared, it's really important to have that kind of a connect with the employees. Some light on the confidentiality of company information while working from home. Very, very good question, Sindhu. Thank you for that. While we are working from home, a lot of the security issues also arise. So what do you do with the data that is there? One important tool that organizations have utilized here is your VPN connectivity. So when you're connected over a secure network, it's much more simpler for the employees who are working on their own home devices, or when they're working from home, to keep their data secure. So I download a piece of data over the VPN, I work on that data, and I put it back into the cloud, so that there is nothing which is staying on my laptop. And that's how that's a very important, or a very common way that employers are using to ensure confidentiality of data. Right, Jessica, is there any support for people who were not prepared for this situation and are left fumbling or frustrated because they wanted to support their employees but are not equipped or prepared? Very empathetic question. I completely understand. It's a challenge because excuse me. I know a lot of organizations who have a lot of people, a large part of their organization workforce below a certain level who do not have laptops, and they are suddenly having to send them home. They are coping up fairly well by allowing people to bring their own device to their remote work. The BYOD policies are very clearly laid out to tell them that this is what you can do and you cannot do. For example, if you have a smartphone and then a tab, use the tab for the official work and keep the smartphone for your personal work. If you don't have two separate devices, do not download any games or such apps which can violate any of the data security policies of the organization. Ajesh, any Taskmaster application or a project management online application? Yes.
Hello?
Yes, Chitra. Chitra, let me just answer Ajesh's question and then I will come back to you.
Sorry, I was talking to someone else here. I'm sorry.
No problem. You can put yourself on mute and you can put your question on the chat window. Right. So we were talking about the project management online applications. One of my real favorites is Trello, and I will just give the name over here in the chat window for everybody to note it down. It's specifically useful for people working in sales and business development and lead generation. It kind of helps you identify, what status are you on at this point of time? Have you moved on to the next status? What is the status of rejects? And so you can create different buckets like you would do for a project management role or a charter. And it's a very useful online application where you can share documents as well. Srijit, better working from home, better working in office than from home. At least I can be out of office. Absolutely. We talked about this when we talked about the time management piece in the Pomodoro technique, because a lot of people fall prey to this, that they start working early in the morning, the moment they open their eyes, and then the work just doesn't stop. And there is work at home which has to be managed as well. So really important thing to be done is to create a roster, create a list of things that I want to achieve tomorrow and take it one day at a time. All right. Pramod, any tips for engaging field sales team who are currently being forced to work from home? Very, very good question. Thank you for that. A really good thing that a lot of organizations are doing at this point of time, and a lot of the FMCG organizations, I have an FMCG background as well. So a lot of my ex-colleagues and such, they have been engaging the field sales team in self-development programs. So building their capability now in order to help them compensate for whatever happens later is something which they are doing at this point of time. Also, they are having a lot of team connects, because field sales really needs to be talking to each other at all points of time. So a lot of connects both with the team leaders and with the HR. So that's also really important for them. Yes, John, thank you so much. Asana is also a very good tool for team if you have a smaller team. If there are any further questions that you can think of, or any challenges that you get stuck at, feel free to write into us and we'll be happy to connect, happy to navigate our community through in this point of time. It's been a very, very good session. Thank you so much, all of you. Just a last announcement before you start signing off. We are going to be having the next of this webinar on the 2nd of April. and that is going to be on organization communication, on handling these challenges and these crisis situations. So just to repeat it for some of the participants who've rejoined, we are going to be having a next webinar on the 2nd of April at the same time from 2 to 4. And it's going to be on the topic of managing organization communication during challenging times like this. We look forward to having you again in that webinar. Please do share your feedback and reviews on our LinkedIn page. It's a wonderful time. Thank you so much. Keep home, keep safe, keep your family safe, and have a very, very productive work from home time as long as it lasts. Thank you all. Signing out for now. Hope to stay connected with all of you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vidhi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pranav.
Thank you, Vidhi. Sri here.
All right, Srijit. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care, Rajesh. Thank you so much for your questions and inputs.
Thank you, Vidhi.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.